Well, as we all join, and I think we're all still joining, I'll start off by saying I'm David True, and those of you who have attended NYPAY events in the fore and before will certainly be really tired of seeing my face. Those of you who haven't, I'm the president of NYPAY. I've had the good fortune to run this August organization for a long time, since like 2010. NYPAY started in 2006, kind of went dormant for a couple of years, got reinvigorated in 2010. We had run only in-person events in New York for quite a few years. COVID shifted that, and now we're going back to a combination of online Zoom events and in-person events. Um, we This is being recorded, as some of you may have heard. This event, as well as other events, are all up on our YouTube NYPAY channel if you wish to go back and see ones you haven't seen before. So please feel free to do that. And we depend on the kindness of strangers, as I think Blanche Dubois or somebody said. So it's a volunteer organization, but we need sponsors. So if anyone finds this interesting and helpful and thinks their organization might be willing to chip in a little bit, please let me know. Um, so I've been in the payments world like a long time, before most of you were born, probably. And I've had the good fortune during that time to meet a lot of really bright, articulate, curious, cool people. And I'm really delighted that four of those people are on this event tonight. So you'll get the chance to benefit from all that wisdom and enthusiasm and curiosity. Um, One thing to make sure, these folks are contributing their own opinions, and the panelists are, as I said, representing themselves, not their employers. The opinions they share are theirs and theirs only, and do not represent those of their employer, past or present. And keep in mind, this is like one of those T&E things you look at when you're signing up for software. You just go say, sure, okay. So Trisha's supposed to smile when I say that. Anyway, a little bit of housekeeping.
Keep a poker
Uh,
face.
what?
I'm trying to
Sorry?
keep a poker face.
Yeah, no, you're good. So questions, please use the chat. We welcome questions. An interactive discussion is always good. There will be Q&A at the end, but the questions may be covered during the discussion. This will be followed by one or two breakout rooms where you'll be put into a room with folks who were at the event to chat in a more informal way. And um, I would also ask, please, that you turn off your camera and microphone so the attention can be purely on the moderator and the panelists. And so with that, I would like to kick it over to the amazing Sarah Ellenson to put this event in gear.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it, and thank you for the great introduction. Good afternoon and good evening. My name is Sarah Ellenson, as David mentioned. When I am not moderating panels such as these, I am a strategy and M&A consultant leading EY's fintech and payments practice. I am thrilled to be moderating our discussion today. Not only do we have an amazing topic, but as David mentioned, we have some amazing panelists here today. As the title of the event promises, we'll be covering Apple's recent announcement that it will be unlocking the iPhone's Secure Element and NFC architecture. Now, for the uninitiated, that could sound like some pretty mundane tech speak, and say, okay, so what? What does this mean? What do I care about the secure element or NFC architecture? What does that have to do with anything I care about in my daily life? Well, for the followers of payments, of banking, of loyalty, of identity, of commerce, of Web3, and I could go on, this has really interesting implications. So I have three panelists here who will help us unpack the unlock, if you will. Each will bring a unique insight into the topic. We'll level set first on what Apple have committed to exactly, the far-ranging impacts of their announcement, and then we'll hypothesize on what could come next. Looking forward to getting everybody's thoughts on that in the breakouts afterwards. So before we jump in, I will have the panelists each introduce themselves, maybe just a few words on your background and what gets you excited about this news in particular. And I'll go in the order that I see it on the screen. So I'll start with Trish, then Thad, then Justin. Trish.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. So hi, everyone. Trish Burgess. I'm currently working in product marketing at Airbnb. I have, I'm going to say, 12, 13 years in the payments and identity industry. I am 100% a payments nerd and also just like David, just broadly curious. So all of this is of interest to me just because we're opening additional infrastructure and capabilities that I think is going to level the playing field for a lot more innovation to come on board. And what have I done in this last 20, 13 years? Sorry, not 20, 12, 13 years. Really my story, I'm just, I started with Visa, working on their digital wallet, V.me or Visa Checkout. I also worked for Apple, both on Apple Pay and Apple Card. And I also started an identity company in the digital identity space, which obviously all of this would be very relevant for that company. That's not where I am today, but I still wear that hat. And that's how I see a lot of things that happen in the industry. So thank you. And I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. There's going to be some real relevant points based on your background there, Trish. So appreciate you joining. Thad, on to you.
Hey, yeah, thanks, Sarah. Hey, everybody. I'm Thad Peterson. I'm a strategic advisor at Datos Insights. In case you haven't heard of Datos Insights, we used to be iPay Group. We decided to go with a more pronounceable name, which I'm all in favor of. Made me very happy. I've been there for about 10 years. My specific area of expertise is payment acceptance, digital wallets, and emerging technologies. I've been in the payment space since before Y2K. I'll go no further than that. But I've seen a lot of stuff, as we all have. Prior to Datos, I was a partner at Edgar Denn and Company, which is a strategy consulting firm in the payment space. And I also spent some time at Merit's Loyalty Marketing as their head of loyalty strategy for the financial services group. What excites me about Apple opening up the digital identity for everybody basically is that it really creates new opportunities for putting other stuff in a wallet that you can't do right now. And if you look at a wallet, a digital wallet is essentially a clone of a physical wallet. It's a repository of information. And the more information that you can put in there that the people can use, and by activating it through the Secure Element and through NFC, that means that all of a sudden there's a whole wealth of value that can be loaded into that wallet that wasn't there before.
Thank you. We're going to come back to you on some questions, I think, related to loyalty, given your background. So appreciate that. And
Sure.
Justin.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I've been in the payment space since 2010. I've worked in consulting, large tech companies, and also, oddly enough, municipal government. Worked for New York City Department of Finance. That's where I got my start in payments, and started to really hone in on payments and security and privacy, and then spent some time really learning and becoming a bit of an expert in digital identity. And actually a bit of transit. So there's some interesting stuff about the way that the NFC, sort of the secure element, is opening up, and the certain sort of specific use cases that have been opened up. Some of that was happening maybe a little bit behind the scenes before this, broader opening from a transit perspective. But I think there's some really exciting use cases, as everyone's already talked about before, that are potentially going to be enabled that wouldn't have been otherwise if this didn't happen. So, yeah, excited to be here.
Thank you. Fantastic. Why don't we maybe just start with a little bit of level setting and talk first about what this is, what it isn't, maybe a bit about why it's being done. And if I can ask you, Justin, to help us get all on the same sort of foundation here.
Yeah, so I don't know, a couple of months ago now, there was an update into, I'm going to preface this with I'm not an Apple analyst, so I'm not going to, be right down to the perfect, precise details, but there has been sort of an opening of the approach to the secure element Previously, it was only available for payment cards that, if any of you have used Apple Pay, know very well. I probably will leave Trish to some of those more intimate details, but the point really is that there was more of a focus on payments and only payments than the move into some other sort of special use cases like transit, like I mentioned before. But this really opens it up even wider, right? Things like car keys and corporate badge access, home keys, hotel keys. There's some very specific, uh, almost those of us that have been in the payments industry, like merchant codes type of use cases that are being allowed, event tickets, and government ID, which I think is one of those interesting points that we'll get into during the discussion around the emergence of MDL using sort of the ISO 18013-5 standard, and sort of that emerging as the preferred choice of issuing authorities for government ID across the US. And in some cases globally, but there's a little bit of a mix and disjointedness there, so that's kind of interesting. So
Real
what
quick,
it's
sorry,
not is
Justin.
just completely opening up to any potential use case. So I just wanted to make that point too. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, I was interrupting you just to clarify MDL. What is that for
Oh,
folks?
sorry. Yes, of course, alphabet soup. I should explain. It's a mobile driver's license. So any version of well, specifically the one I'm talking about is the one based on an ISO standard. And that has been released now for several years, a global standard. And there are almost a dozen states that either have it live or in production. So, for example, California, Utah, those now you can get a mobile driver's license version of your driver's license, or really in the end, it's mobile ID, right? It could be any type of identifying document. It could be, you know, there's all kinds of other ID, issued by state authorities. So that's my point.
Got it. Okay. So what it is, it's allowing any wallet to now build on the secure element architecture. And so that's governments. So we should think maybe identity use cases for that. They can do it for free, right? There's no commercial element for governments. Others can do it with commercial terms, which are to be determined. And to your point, there's a set number of use cases that have been laid out there.
What's interesting about that, though, is that I think, not to interrupt you again, but
Yeah.
the mobile driver's license actually opens up other use cases, which we've seen in TSA, allowing for streamlined check-in at airports, which isn't necessarily what the original intention was, but TSA and Homeland Security have latched onto that and are working with AMVA and other state authorities to really fast track that into airports because it's pretty important, helpful with security.
So a little bit of daisy chaining of opportunities and use
Yeah.
cases by opening up that one. And then I thought one thing that was interesting is that any new wallet would still need to work through its own set of integrations, licenses, standards. Apple is not necessarily providing what they've already built within Apple Pay to other wallets. It's you can come into the secure element, but you're not going to get the benefit of what they've already built.
Yeah, right. I think that's where it's a little bit different than the banking model so far, which has, enabled a lot of that infrastructure build up, tokenization, and all these other details we probably don't need to talk too much about here, but that changed the way that information exchanged in the digital economy, right? And it was just payments before. I think this opening may enable that eventually, but they're not doing it at first, right? You have to have your own infrastructure and architecture to enable that. And I don't know if Trish, you have any more thoughts on that maybe are more intelligent than my knowledge of Apple's, actual plans or potential plans. Not that, yeah.
No, I was there a long time ago, so I obviously have no idea what their plans
Yeah.
are or would be. But I do keep thinking, and I don't know, maybe there's already out there because this leaves a big opening maybe for companies that would build that infrastructure, that would build wallets that are SE based, both for iOS, for Android, for everything else, in order to basically facilitate that time to market. And really, a lot of companies just don't have the know-how anyway. So
Exactly.
either there is an industry that comes up that facilitates this across mobile OSs, or otherwise, I think it will be difficult for this to have big
Well, what's
adoption.
interesting about that, I think, is that there's a lot of digital identity space that's kind of creating orchestrators and connectors between even mobile driver's licenses or other ISO international sort of identity documents. Some different things going on in Europe with the new European wallet and things like that. That I think there's a convergence that's kind of the interesting time and moving to a more ubiquitous or mature market. I don't think Apple wants to be the like be all end all like only environment, right? And I think that's reflected in these changes, right? Is they don't expect to be an issuer, right? They expect to hold issued documents.
That's right.
Mm.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, and I think, like the initiative that you mentioned in Europe, and I think it's happening all around the world, because different platforms have opened at different speeds. I think that there is I wouldn't say a plethora, but there is a number of technology pathways that you can kind of go through in order to enable this sort of solution, right? So like you said, the SE is one of maybe 3, 4, 5, 10 that with their pluses and minuses, right? So this is just one piece of the puzzle, and it's the future is not dependent on it. That's all, even if it does enable it and help it.
So you started to touch on it a bit, Trish, but just where is this rolling out around the world? I think what I've seen is Australia, Brazil, Canada, Japan, New Zealand, the UK, and the US. I think Europe is maybe being covered through separate settlement, sort of antitrust settlements with Apple. Is that any other insights on sort of where this is happening?
Actually, I'm not even super sure of the full list, so I can't comment. I am not sure. I'm not sure what the list of countries is.
Actually, either. I was hoping somebody else knew.
I think that's
Sure,
the
that's
general, and I think those are the sort of the key jurisdictions that have actually been putting a lot of pressure on Apple to open this up. So that's why you see those ones moving first. Let me shift gears to Thad, and obviously this isn't just about payments, right? We know that there are a ton of other use cases, but where do you really see this taking hold? What is this about? What do we see happening here?
Yeah, I mean, we're all payments geeks on this call, so it's very, very easy for us to fall into that trap. But the real value in my mind is all the things that you can connect and make secure and drop into a mobile wallet. I'm sure you've all noticed, as I have, that there's a lot more mobile wallet purchases happening at POS just in the last year. And it's not just Gen Z and millennials. A lot of people are using the wallets. So what that means is this is going to create more utility for that device. And with more utility, that creates value for Apple. That's what Apple's doing it for, I think. Plus, they had some issues that they had to deal with. But I think it really enhances the value proposition of the wallet itself. The things that you can think about as you start to build this thing out is beyond wallets is, I'm sure we all have Ticketmaster apps. You could load Ticketmaster in there. The tickets can be there. They can be safe and secure. You can pop them right up. They're very easy to get to. They're integrated with the payment flows, so you got to get that done. Boarding passes, driver's licenses was discussed before. So any kind of document that needs to be secure, that needs to have access to some sort of funds transfer somewhere down the road, can be enabled by this. And I think it's one of these opportunities where we kind of don't know what we don't know yet. There's developers out there, I'm sure right now, figuring out stuff that we won't think about for a while. And that's the beauty of this opportunity is it really opens up a greenfield opportunity for creating new use cases for the mobile wallet.
I think it's you said something in your introduction, Thad, about the mobile wallet becoming the repository, just like a regular wallet. And clearly, a regular wallet does not have a secure element, right? So that in and of itself makes the wallet much more. It gives the wallet much more utility.
Exactly right.
I think one interesting point here I would say is we can, but should we? Right? Like, how is it better than scanning your QR code at the airport or scanning your QR code at the Ticketmaster, the arena? Do they even have NFC at the terminal, like, at the gates? So I think that's an interesting, it's kind of one of the dichotomies constantly of technology, right? Is great, we
Yeah.
have a silver bullet, but is there actually something to shoot at?
Or do we have a gun?
Or do we have a gun? Yes, exactly. I think
Yeah.
there are a lot of use cases where they combine into something really interesting, but
Mhm.
I call me a skeptic about, Ticketmaster.
So it's interesting you say that. I do remember at the beginning or through earlier days of mobile wallets and this is US centric, and saying, look, how hard is it really to pull a card out of a wallet and pay with the card? It works really well. Um, it's a pain, Now I
Mhm.
realize that, those 7 seconds, it's a pain, and I've got things in my hand, and so I figured it out. It's the adoption has spiked, certainly with as contactless has rolled out. So we'll see.
Mhm.
It's what doesn't seem necessary today, maybe grows in utility as more and more things are in there, and that becomes the thing that's readily at hand.
Yeah, and I
Yep.
think for the use cases, it may just be, maybe they will need to be important enough so that they need to be secure enough and where speed is really relevant, right? And maybe those would be the use cases that really win here. But I do agree with that at the end of the day, the more utility and therefore the more habituation that you can bring, then really the more successful it's going to be. So even if it's just looking for that habituation, bringing more use cases, I think will be valuable.
Mhm.
Justin, how does this impact the sort of further adoption of digital ID? Help, hurt? Give us that.
I
Does
think
it
it
take us
it
forward 10
helps
years?
if it depends on how you view digital identity. I think there's a lot of controversy about what do we call digital identity. I'm not going to get into that, but I do think the emergence of things like mobile driver's licenses that are cryptographic based, standards would benefit from being able to be, put into the Apple Wallet, right, and interacted through a secure, cryptographic way that makes everything. Somebody, Larry commented in the comments that QR codes aren't very secure and can be faked. Agreed. I think it depends on how much risk there is in a transaction. Is it worth, right? It's going to cost them more to put it in the secure element too. Probably, I would assume so. Um, there's a business model there. Is it worth, is there enough fraud or fakes that cause enough financial harm where that makes sense? Probably. But I think it's going to be important to be very intentional about those use cases and go for the highest risk first, right? So I don't know, that didn't exactly answer your question about digital identity. I do think that there's a broader set of like digital credentials, digital trust that is beyond just cryptographic in a secure element. But a lot of the decentralized technologies, I think Web3 was mentioned before.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cryptography in there, which could benefit from hardware cryptography as opposed to just software cryptography, things in the cloud, which, if not implemented well, can be intercepted. So, again, it really depends on risk and the adoption of use cases. But I think we see a shift, particularly in North America. I think everywhere else in the world thinks that we're crazy and digital identity is already everywhere. Europe and Australia and other places. But I do think that the emergence of MDL, mobile driver's license in particular, that's going to enable a lot of remote use cases eventually. Right now, it's just in person, face to face. But being able to just know that an identity is real and not fake, it's so easy to fake a real, like a driver's license to make it look real. And there's like hundreds of websites where you can just go and buy for $100. Here, put my face, this information, and it looks legit. It passes, the mobile driver's, the driving license document scanning things. Sometimes, but that's a whole other story. So I think it will absolutely help reduce risk, improve security, and it might push MDL to be more adopted because it's already in that cryptographic sort of
Yeah.
wallet-based environment to
But
start.
Justine, I just want to highlight that that's going to really depend on the implementation of each of the new players, right? So
Yeah.
the hardware is there, it's available, and you obviously can build a really secure system, but it's going to be one by one. Each of these third parties that are going to need to develop it and then get approved and, you know, maintain it. So it's obviously
Slow going.
there's just so
Yeah.
much more, right, that needs to be built on top.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think you'll see, especially for the driver's license stuff, there are several that are competing, big players, already have a lot of this, some better than others, and have already secured contracts. Like the state government process is going to bog a lot of that down, but it's definitely moving faster than it was even 3, 4 years ago, right? We're seeing more than just one implementation at a time.
Yeah, I saw a question in the chat that in some of the markets that I rattled off, iPhone usage is maybe lower than say Android. And will that be will that impact the pace of this change? And it sounds like there are other things that are going to impact the pace of this change, maybe as much or more than iPhone adoption, and that's these app owners or these use case owners who need to build on top of it, right? Whether it's government or commercial entities. There's still a lot of work to be done to be able to take advantage of this.
Yeah, and I think as well, obviously, if the iPhone penetration is low, that means that other manufacturers, whether it's Samsung, LG, etc., are strong. And I believe they have their secure elements, kind of the architecture is already much more open. So this is again just one piece of the puzzle, right? So they may have already started working with some of those providers that were already open before.
Yeah, and Apple always works for the best interests of Apple. So they're going to look at the markets where they have significant penetration, where they can get critical mass really quickly, and that's going to drive a significant amount of revenue for them. So, yeah, there are markets that have lower share, but from Apple's perspective, going into the U.S. and the markets that they're going into is going to be pretty helpful for them.
Ted, I want to stay with you and pick back up on loyalty. And how could this impact sort of loyalty offerings on the brand side or on the card side?
Well, yeah, it's an interesting thought because, at this point, if you think about loyalty, you make a purchase, you acquire point. Let's use a frequent flyer program. You acquire points, the points go up on your Delta app, and that's where they are. And if you want to spend them, you go over there and you spend them. What this potentially can do is make a direct linkage between the purchase that you make and the consumption that you have and the loyalty program. So those points can immediately be moved into a secure element for making immediate purchase in the same place. So again, it's like having a card in your wallet. You can just pull it out and use it. It's right there. You don't have to go to 2 or 3 sites. And that's very helpful. The other thing it can do is it provides a great deal of information coming back in terms of what they're consuming and what they're doing that can enrich a loyalty program and make it more valuable for the consumer. So it works kind of both ways, in my opinion. But I think the real value prop is linking the value of the loyalty program directly to the activity going on in a secure element.
So technical question, I don't know if anyone knows, can data in some way be shared across apps that are using the secured element? So if I'm gathering data from a loyalty perspective and transactions are happening through the same secure element, are these sort of containerized activities that don't pass among the apps, or is it possible to share? May have gone too technical on that. I don't know.
That's a good question. I don't know the exact answer. I would imagine it's not going to be a free for all, but there will be some ability, with PKI, public key, public-private keys between, approved risk-free entities, where they're likely within the ecosystem. I would imagine there has to be a way to exchange some data, just like in the verifiable credentials model, digital credentials, where you're exchanging information and maybe there's more control on the end user side to say, yes, release this data. Often that key is actually what's being encrypted based on the PIN, Face ID, Touch ID, all those things. So it seems to make sense to me that there would be an ability to exchange, but I think probably safe to say still to be determined as it evolves and matures.
Think about how much the utility could continue to increase and build on itself if the data from all of the different use cases are in some way then being able to be harnessed by not just Apple but others. So interesting.
Yeah, merchants and relying parties is where the adoption could really take off, especially if they're across those use cases, right? That's where there might be a lot of value.
Is there a tie-in with open banking on this?
I think there could be. I think it's, again, still to be determined. I think somebody asked in the chat, there's potential for account to account. In North America, I don't think there's any chance that the banks are ready for that yet. Just my own humble opinion. But I think the potential for service providers, vendors to come in and help financial institutions, issuing authorities to leverage other aspects of the wallet that they could potentially shift to an account to account, or things like faster payments in the UK that are coming to account type rails in US, Canada, real-time rails, these kinds of things that are coming but not quite here yet. Yeah, there's certainly potential, but I don't have a crystal ball, I wish.
So we can turn to the crystal ball section of this session. The next block I wanted to cover was what comes next, right? So Apple has laid out these very specific use cases, and we can speculate on is this just the beginning? Where could we go from here? Maybe I'll start with Trish, and I know Trish again, so I'll do the caveat. We know you formerly at Apple, but it was a while ago, and so this is more thinking about, where would you like to see this evolve to? Not necessarily with any inside knowledge on that.
Yeah, no, and that's actually a good question. The way that I think about these things often is I try to think of a day in the life of X. So a day in the life of a normal, everyday person. And obviously with the use cases that they're covering at the moment, there is still many holes. I can think about things around education, things around smart cities, which hopefully that's the direction in which we're generally going. Things around medical care. I don't know, there are still... and they do have some stuff around work credentials, but I think that that's still a really ample area where there's probably a lot more work that needs to be done. So I think that there's still a lot of key areas that are missing from this description. And to be honest, I think it's probably a mix between, the market isn't quite ready. To be honest, for a lot of this, the market isn't necessarily quite ready yet, right? The markets are being developed, like even hotel keys, for example. It's something that is available, but you don't see a lot of people using yet. But I think in things like education, there are so many players that need to be involved, like the issuers of the credentials, that could be universities, for example, or schools, that the work around that ecosystem may be broader. So that may be something that comes over time. I don't know, right? But so I think and to be honest, I think that may also depend on the specific geographical area kind of in the world, whether it's US or Latin, Europe, Asia, etc., right? Because it's not just about maybe NFC adoption, but is really how people are used to interacting with some of these things.
Education is an interesting ecosystem, if you will. We're seeing a lot of interest in embedded payments or integrated payments for, say, school activity fees, for tuition payments, for lunches, right, meal plans, et cetera. And then you get into all the access to campus facilities and whatnot. So I think that's a wide open area for sure that brings in some of these elements.
That's right.
Thad, we can't do a session around payments without bringing in AI. And I think we probably, a lot of the sessions before, and if everyone was at Money 2020, there were, a million AI vendors talking about sort of traditional use cases for AI.
Mhm.
Beyond what we're already seeing there, around anticipatory commerce, fraud, or servicing, and those sort of typical AI use cases, is there anything new here that you could see?
Well, it's kind of an interesting thing if you take a step back and look at this. We're talking about two unknown technologies commingling. We don't know what we don't know about this technology. We don't really know what we don't know about the new AI. They're going to come together, and there's going to be some really interesting things that happen out of that. I don't think there's any way to effectively predict that, but you could imagine a situation where AI could be essentially like a payment orchestrator, but for the wallet, that could identify the context and the terms and the situation that mobile device is in, and from that point of view, pull down the appropriate piece from the wallet for that specific thing, be that a hotel key, be that a driver's license, be that a whatever. You could see an AI front end that could be pretty powerful for that. You could also see AI built in that to when you have multiple choices of things. Let's go to payments and say you have 4 cards. You have a preferred card for this store. You have a preferred card for that store. AI can make those decisions as well. It can do it on balances, so it can really enrich the entire experience. And I'm quite sure that it will. It's just that it's really difficult to understand where we're going to go, given that they're both very, very new.
I just started thinking about the idea of my wallet hallucinating, like a typical, and so that's some dystopia that I don't want to see in the future.
Yeah,
Well,
hallucinating $100,000 credit line, for
Yeah,
instance.
yeah. Sorry, go
well,
ahead, Trish.
but going maybe, thinking, thinking about payments, but maybe thinking just more broadly, we talked a lot, all of us kind of in the past around economic agents, right?
Mhm.
And the possibility of actually having full agents represent us online and helping us make decisions. And in my head, the wallet could be a perfect tie-in with this agent because it holds my identity and so much information. And so, I don't know, hopefully they don't hallucinate, right? And they're really built in a way that they are looking after my best interest and they can be reliable. But I don't know, to me, AI, it's just the sky is the limit, right? It's a way to have me as the user at the center of the interactions, protecting me, identifying me. I don't know. And I really see the wallets at the center of this as a great channel for this agent. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think you're right. I think the idea of a personal agent, the idea of essentially a personal, use the old world term, secretary that keeps track of everything and knows what you're going to do and knows that you're going to go to LA next week and takes care of that stuff because it understands where you're going and what you want because it's been tracking your behavior and links it directly into the secure transactions is a really powerful idea. And I would think that it'd be something that all of us could use like yesterday.
Yeah,
You,
it's and
you both
obviously
said a really, oh, sorry, go ahead, Trish.
no, it's because you're part of Consult Hyperion, and of course David Birch is a big proponent
Oh yeah.
of this agents, right? So
It was,
would love
yeah.
to hear your opinion.
It's funny, I heard you both say the word agent. It's actually the next thing I was going to say and related to blurring the lines between physical and digital and kind of all of that. I I think one of the things we've been seeing for years now is, okay, great, there's a wallet and you have maybe 3 to 5 or there's a limit, right? 6, actual banking payment cards you can have in there. Well, what happens when we have 100 physical digital things in our wallet, whatever they are, tickets, student ID. There has to be something that can coordinate, orchestrate, just make decisions. And uh, I'm a little more skeptical about AI being the solution to all of our problems, but I think that there are and have been for several years efforts to have smart agents or things like that that maybe will sit on top of a wallet that can help orchestrate. All right, this and like make a decision, right? To say, oh, this card you're using, as an example, has a better loyalty, rewards if you use it with this transaction,
Mhm.
and that it gets more and more sophisticated with, okay, which ID do you need to enter your corporate, office? Which one's going to get you discounts if you have a student discount at the, or maybe you're a senior discount, or, instead of just presenting your ID, it might present attributes, right? That's kind of the whole point for a long time now of digital identity is it's not just about ID, it's about securely sharing trusted data about me in a way that I want and not just freely, open to anyone for any reason because, I'm the product and I'm an advertising, revenue stream.
Yeah.
So
That's a
we've
really
been
good point.
we've been talking about this in the context of almost the wallet as a gateway or a door to commerce and experience. What if it's also becomes a gateway and a door to the sort of your full financial world? And it's not just payments, but it's also savings, it's insurance, it's investing. Could we see that be a future use case here?
I certainly think so, because it is a space, like you said, not just payments, but investments, insurance. These are all difficult decisions that are also boring,
Mhm.
that nobody likes making, and that many of us are not really in the best position. We just don't have enough knowledge to be making the right decision, right? And we also get influenced by nice fluffy advertisements around my insurance, where really the fluffy advertising should play no role in your decision. And those are all things that a bot, my agent, should be able to do on my behalf. Granted, and I understand that we're very far from that point today, I think, at least. I don't know, I keep getting surprised, so maybe we're not that far, but I think we are. But I do believe that's the direction. But then, of course, we go back to, hey, it's not just about the hardware or the infrastructure that is available. It's not even just about AI being able to do it, but it's also about the regulation and the safeguards put in place so that really my rights are being respected and things are being done, for my benefit and not for the benefit of maybe the company that built that AI, right? So there's just now it's an even bigger ecosystem
Mhm.
that needs to come into play, but it's really exciting.
To build on your point, Trish, about the ecosystem of financial services, insurance, and all that other stuff, in terms of wise decisioning, that's really an important point. But there's a potential also, don't you think, of faster decisioning, so that you could start to take a day trader model and put it on steroids and give it an AI bot in the front end and access to the secure element on the back end and let it go, and potentially you could accelerate markets with that kind of a device. So it has potential to work on both sides of the equation.
Oh, wow, I have to say I hadn't given that much thought, but that's awesome.
Well, thank you. I hadn't either.
Just came to you.
Yeah, it did.
Is there also something that can be learned from other geographies, right? That I think in other parts of the world, wallet usage and utility is very different than it is here in the US. And maybe there's a way, if we go back in history and look at some of those and how they've developed, does that provide any clues to what we may see with this? And maybe Trish, you want to comment on some differences that we've seen in different geographies?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'm actually thinking, because what the thought that keeps coming up, like I said at the beginning, right? Apple is just opening the secure element. And so different countries and different areas in the world have developed differently. On the one hand, based on, what technologies they had available to them, but also based on really a lot of times what the governments allowed to happen, and what also the kind of the big networks, for example, allowed to happen, right? And with this, I'm thinking, so even if we look at Asia, there are examples very, very different that can be like China and Korea, right? So in China, if we think about ID, for example, this is something that the government wants to control very tightly. And actually, they just started to launch their digital ID solution a few months back, and it's been adopted and growing very quickly. But it is very centralized, government controlled. And of course, I imagine it's unlikely that they would want to have kind of public-private partnerships in order to enable this identity, right? So things like secure elements or additional third-party manufacturer capabilities that come online may not be very relevant for countries like that, right? There's no reason for the government to want to have that dependency on third parties, particularly if they're foreigner. But then you have places like Korea, for example, where, you know, Samsung, LG, they already have those partnerships happening. And so Apple is probably going to be part of that ecosystem and is going to just amplify, right, what they're doing. And of course, I'm thinking that places like Europe may be closer to the Korean model, where even though it's very government driven, there's that openness to those partnerships and to dependencies on third parties and to having many different solutions to implement kind of the overall infrastructure, right? Because they're looking in the EU, part of what they're trying to do with the wallet is to really, there should be models enabled where the wallet is in the cloud, where the wallet's in the SE, where the wallet is in some other location within the phone. So there are places that are a little bit more of a mix. And to me, really, Latin America is, because it is, we always talk about LATAM, but it's really made out of many very different countries with very different stages of development, particularly around ID, that who knows exactly how that's going to play. At least I don't. I'm not going to say who knows, but I think there is a big dependency country by country. So all this to say, I think that based on where these different geographies are coming from, we can already see whether or not this is going to have a big impact on how they're working today, right? And it's very, very country dependent.
Yeah, different launching off points in different countries. Yeah.
That's right.
Well, and I think too, just to like add on to your point about like the international models, even in digital identity, right? A lot of them had a specific need when they first started. Take, Bank ID in the Nordics, for example. They just needed a better security for login, but it just turned in and grew into this digital ID system that was then adopted by government because kind of government didn't want to build their own. That's never going to happen here, right? Like that kind of model there's a lot of differences in geography. So I think this enabling the ability to have, a lot of different parties, I think, to a certain extent, the EU effort now is almost encouraging co-opetition, right? Like there's a much more open approach, as you said. Does that mean that there are, only two or three sort of major players, or are there 12? Well, we have to see how that evolves and as the market matures, but I think that's encouraging to see. Maybe we can take some lessons from that, although, the baseline original lessons are harder to translate culturally. This is the part of technology that is not just because the tech is available, it'll work. Well, no, actually, certain things fell flat, right?
Well, and it always goes back to user adoption, right? What are the consumers going to like best, right? So I do think that we should enable 12 or 20 or 100 competitors to start, but most likely in the end, there will be 1, 2, 3, 5, right? Key solutions that really resonate with the public, right?
Yeah, and one other thing, Justin, earlier you talked about Ticketmaster moving into the digital identity, and one of the things we have to think about is the stuff that's going to move more quickly is the stuff that has the highest friction, that you can actually get it better and faster or cheaper and get it done better, and that's what's going to drive customer adoption. So you kind of have to think of what are the use cases that actually solve problems out there rather than just kind of creating another direction to the same solution.
Higher friction, higher
Couldn't
risk.
agree more.
Yeah.
Yeah. How can we, from an enterprise and corporate perspective, how do we take waste out of process, right? Like that is where things like AI, machine learning, and then how do we use cryptographic sort of techniques and enable transactions that then make those things more efficient, that's where the value certainly will be.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's got to figure out how to do it, though. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not gonna.
This has been great. I want to go to a bit of a lightning round now and just sort of ask each of you very quickly your thoughts on which player has the most to lose here when we think about, and don't name specific companies, please, but is it the issuers of cards? Is it networks? Is it consumers? Is it merchants? Is it brands? Is it governments? Who's got the most to lose?
I can go, and actually, I was just looking at the chat, and Gretchen Rodriguez asked, what about banks? Are they ready to open their wallets too? And to be honest, my answer is I don't think so. Larry just answered, so I haven't seen that answered. I'm not, but I don't think so, and I think that's precisely why they're going to be, in my view, the biggest losers, right? They do have a lot of opportunity here. They have everything to win, but because they are so risk averse and they are so cautious, they're going to try to just stick to the few things that they know how to do and they've been doing for 100 years, which is really around payments and maybe around financing, things like that. But everything else that a wallet can do, identity, hotels, car keys, all of that, I think that they're going to step back and say, oh, no, that's too high a risk. That's not my wheelhouse. Then the utility of their wallet drops, and then I'm just going to go and choose another one. So to me, those are the biggest losers, and that's their own choice, not because they have to, it's their own choice.
Thad or Justin, any competing views?
I don't have a competing view, but I don't know if it was David Birch or Tom Noyes who said that there really aren't any losers in this deal. I completely agree with you, Trish. The banks are banks. They don't make money by taking risk. They make money by not taking risk, and so they're slow. And they may well lose on this unless they hook up with a fintech that can get them out there in front and keep them there. But other than that, I think there's potential across the ecosystem for everybody to benefit from this with the right approach.
Yeah, that I fully agree. Everybody should be a winner.
Yep.
Justin, any final thoughts on that one?
Not drastically different, but I have a slightly different thought and perspective. I think when we think about banks as a whole, I agree, right? Especially the big banks, right? They risk becoming a bit of a utility or commodity. Well, this is just where my money sits, and then I'll go everywhere else for all the cool things because of all the reasons that, you both just said, that they're slow to move, legacy systems. I've been telling them for years, I think there's a lot of opportunity to use verifiable credentials and things to, overcome the firewalls that they have internally, even not before like going outside, right? Just inside the bank. But I think there is an opportunity for credit unions, small banks, community banks, the mid-market that are more like a tugboat than, an oil tanker and able to be more nimble. So when we think about the financial services banking market, I think the big banks have the most to lose from a market share perspective, from a, brand reputation, from, that sort of thing, where if others can take advantage of that, they have the most to lose. I think they also have the most to spend. So it depends, what happens and how they react, but we've not seen them move in a direction that would enable or open up a lot of these other use cases outside of, well, we need cybersecurity, we need two-factor authentication, we need biometrics, right? Like, there have been efforts. There was an effort to make a digital identity network between banks with early warning. Haven't heard a lot about that lately. It kind of like most big collaborative or cooperative efforts with banks gets bogged down by lawyers. So that, I think, I agree. Banks have the most to lose for sure.
And then the other question was, well, which players stand to benefit most from this? I heard everybody wins. Are there any that we think are going to leap to the front here, who really get an acceleration or an accelerant out of this? Issuers, networks, consumers, merchants, brands, banks, or we all win.
I went last, so maybe I'll try to go quickly first and not take up too much time. But I think merchants, consumers, companies, like if they do it right and do it securely with privacy, use the technologies in a way that actually makes life better, easier, faster, cheaper, um, they have the most to gain. Are they going to win? To be determined.
Brad or Trish, any thoughts on that one?
No.
Well, I was just gonna say in my head, so what I thought in the beginning is that really merchants and brands are the ones that would have the most to win. I didn't think that networks would be up there with part of the group that had the most to win. But honestly, seeing the moves lately, particularly from Visa, but also MasterCard, around identity, but also just more generally around trying to open their ecosystem and to enable more use cases and to collaborate. That's why I think that they also stand. They have to play their cards well. I don't think it's as obvious right away, but I think that they also have a lot of potential. And because they're already sort of everywhere, embedded in so many other things, I think it might be easy for them to play their cards well. But I do think that in the end, I'm hoping that it's the consumer, the one that benefits the most, right? That's my hope. Because to me, I hope that merchants and brands use the wallet to need less data, to be able to verify their users better, to gate things better, to protect things better. So I'm hoping in the end is the consumer. That's all.
Well said.
Great comment.
So,
Great
so we often, and this is, I think Bill Gates said this, we often overestimate what can be accomplished in 1 year, but underestimate what can be accomplished in 10. How quickly will we see any impact from this?
Boy, leave us with a
1 year,
cliffhanger,
10
huh?
years?
I hope
Never?
it's sooner than 10. Boy, I mean, the optimist in me wants to say 3 to 5. Optimist in me wants to say 1 to 2, but I think 3 to 5 is
3 to 5.
probably more realistic.
Yeah,
That would-
somebody's gonna dabble their toe in the water in the next couple of years, and we'll start to see what that looks like and how that feels, and that that's kind of how this stuff evolves. Is people get out there and something works and something doesn't work, and it starts to move up. So I think you're right. I'd say 3 to 5 ish is where we're really going to start to see it, because we first you got to understand it, then you got to try it, and then got to make it work at scale. So
Trish?
I fully agree. I agree with those timelines. The only caveat for me, I think I'm really watching what's happening in the EU very closely. If they make it and this is successful, and in 3 years, 5 years, we have this wallets, well, actually, it's supposed to happen faster, wallets for EU citizens that enable cross-border identity payments and all that, then I think that can accelerate. The 3 to 5 years could become shorter. But if that fails, I think maybe we'll need to do some more rethinking, and so that might set things back. That's my only caveat.
That's a
Okay,
really
so-
good point, because I think global interoperability is where this is all going to fall apart unless we do it right.
That's right.
Yeah. The
Now,
impossible
now
dream.
there's a cliffhanger. It's probably a whole
That's
other
a-
webinar.
That is our next, that will be the next webinar. David, True, hopefully you were taking notes on that one. I want to thank you all for all of your thoughtful comments. This has been a great discussion. I think we just hit the sort of the tip of the iceberg on what this could be and where we are today and what this could be. So appreciate everybody in your comments. And then I think there's some logistics maybe around breakouts for further discussion. Maybe we can hit on some of the questions that were being asked in the chat if we didn't get to them.
So, as I said earlier, I'm delighted. Kudos. It's as Sarah said, who knows where this is going to go. It could have a lot of. It's just a fascinating time in this business. Mobile delivery will, in my humble opinion, be the way things are delivered for quite a few years to come. So, the effect that this can have is something that who knows exactly. It'll be really, really fun to watch. So logistically, as Sarah mentioned, we'll break out. couple small groups, let you all talk with folks more directly if you posted questions that weren't answered. So I look forward to seeing you in those groups. And again, this is great, and I'm really, really glad this is being recorded and will be posted because there's a lot of nuggets to dig into here. So, Bill or Nikki, why don't you take it over to the breakouts?